What do you get when you combine my love for chaotic miniatures, my Mormon missionary past, and a can of bear meat? I recently discovered a fun, grimdark miniatures game called Trench Crusade. I liked it so much, it inspired me to create my own fan faction based on my own lived experience. But this would require me to do something I haven't done in 25 years. Turns out, this is so deeply personal, it nearly broke me to make it. I never thought I'd find a game darker than Warhammer 40k, or one that would pull me away from my love for chaos. But Trench Crusade didn't just pull me away, it dragged me, mud and all, and forced me to confront my personal demons I didn't even know were lurking beneath the surface. And now, that journey's come full circle. I created the Trench Missionaries, my very own faction I can play in Trench Crusade, and I've even managed to get them made in hard plastic sprue. But the most nerve-wracking part about this whole experience was when I met the Trench Crusade team in person in London, England, to show them my drawings. Because doing so would trigger some deep-seated feelings I haven't had since childhood. But to understand why this matters so much, I'll need to provide some context. One Sunday afternoon, when I was 5 years old, my family and I came home from church. But this wasn't just any ordinary Sunday. Something happened that would change my life forever. This was the day I discovered a hidden talent buried deep within myself. I had a coloring book, and on the cover was a cartoon. It was one of those cartoons that came on every Saturday morning, and every week I looked forward to watching it. So, dressed in my Sunday best, which included a white dress shirt fit for a 5-year-old, a clip-on tie, hand-me-down from my older brother, and still wearing my black second-hand dress shoes, I grabbed a stack of lined paper, began to draw. Stick figures became boxy shapes. These shapes later turned into people, but it was only a matter of time before it evolved into an idea that would change everything. I turned my neck to stretch it, noticed the cartoon character on the cover of my coloring book, and I thought to myself, I want to draw that. I want to draw Bugs Bunny. What's the most iconic thing about Bugs Bunny? Well, it was the one thing I knew I had to draw. So I placed a piece of paper over the cover and began slowly tracing the outline of his left ear, then his right. I'd make attempt after attempt to get those ears just right. It was an explosion of brain activity which made time pass like nothing else. I laid on my floor and drew for hours and hours. As dinner time approached, my mom opened the door to my room. She poked her head in and asked, "David, it's dinner time. You hungry?" To which I replied, "I'm not hungry, Mom." "But sweetheart, you need to eat." "But Mom, I'm drawing pictures. I'll eat later." And from that moment on, nothing could take me away from my art. But this was just the beginning. My interest in drawing would later manifest at school. I quickly realized I was that kid in class who could draw. And whenever there was an assignment that required a drawing, other kids would come up to my desk and say, "That's really good, Dave. Whoa, how'd you do that? You're such a good drawer." But in spite of this, as far as school was concerned, I was a shy kid and wasn't comfortable expressing myself. Good thing I could always count on my drawing. This became a big part of my identity. Well, that was until I was 10. My dad went back to college to upgrade his skills, and our family was required to move cities. This meant I had to change schools, leave all my friends behind, and for the first time, learn what it was like being the new kid in class. So, knowing no one, and finding myself in a brand new environment, I leaned on what gave me confidence. I drew pictures. But this time it was different. This time, I'd draw, but no one noticed. Nobody said anything. I didn't understand why. Until on the second day as the new kid, the class receives an assignment to write a story and draw a cover page for it. And that's when one by one, the kids started giving compliments. "Oh wow, that's so good. How did you draw that? I wish I could draw like you." But they weren't directing their comments to me. They were talking to Amanda, the girl who they'd known since kindergarten, their talented friend who could draw, the resident class artist. How on earth could I compete with that? No matter how much I drew, my art never received the attention it did all those years beforehand. Was there something wrong with me? Was I no longer good at drawing pictures? Was I ever any good? It wasn't until a year later that my teacher threw me a crumb. The assignment, draw a loaf of bread on a cutting board. But mine wasn't the only one he praised. He said, "Hey class, as you can see, Amanda drew a wonderful picture. Oh, and David's is pretty good too. As much as I wasn't the center of attention, I still felt seen. I was once again validated as an artist, but little did I know, I would stop drawing entirely at 16. For what came next took priority, and drawing would become a distraction I'd be forced to eliminate. Leading up to my 20th birthday, I thought of nothing else except for preparing to become a missionary. I wanted to serve God. I learned to speak Spanish, lived in Mexico for 6 months, and experienced what it was like to preach the gospel and baptize people. Life was great until I was diagnosed with bipolar and had to come home early. I thought, this is devastating. I worked so hard to be here. Why is this happening to me? My mental health took a turn for the worse, such that I was hospitalized. No matter how much I prayed, the chemical demons in my brain had ultimate control over my soul. Were it not for my angel wife, who stayed by my side every step of the way, I wouldn't be here today. But time has a way of healing wounds in a way unlike any therapy or medication. In 2007, I discovered Warhammer 40k, and I've been hobbying ever since. The tabletop gaming experience of assembling and painting an army of soldiers, then battling with them against an opponent, is unlike any other. I've always loved the look and feel of the grimdark side of characters. Maybe it reflected the darkness I felt inside. Perhaps it was an unfiltered version of myself that was normally hidden. I continued to play Warhammer for years until one day I discovered the most irreverent thing I'd ever seen in the wargaming community. A combination of faith and fury, art and rage, beauty and blasphemy. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. Trench Crusade sparked a hyperfixation I hadn't felt in years. So I reached out to Mike Francina, learned why he created it, and instantly empathized with why he did. Trench Crusade is what happens when the voice of an artist is silenced, when artistic expression is shackled in favor of corporate profit. When working for Blizzard Entertainment, he created many concepts that were rejected for being too extreme. So a stockpile of gruesome art grew over time. Eventually, he had everything he needed to make a game, and he wasn't alone in his passion. I was so moved by this, it inspired me to pick up a pencil and draw. It evoked a feeling I hadn't felt since I was a kid. The creative spark had once again ignited within me, and I could not stop. For a week straight, I designed unit after unit, meticulously adding details that both fit within the setting and meant something deeply personal to me. I combined the military fatigues of World War I with Mormon missionary attire, but appropriate to the time frame. I grabbed inspiration from figures I learned about as a kid and incorporated them into these proxies. I grabbed symbols that represent faith and ritual, then repurposed them as icons of war, meant to instill fear in the hearts of enemies of God on the battlefield. I drew upon my experiences living in the spiritual trenches of Mexico and designed my own custom faction meant to proxy as New Antioch, the faithful faction fighting on humanity's side of this alternate reality. I created an army of Trench Missionaries, trained to preach the word of the Metachrist, armed with scriptures on their belts, white shirts and ties to properly represent their Lord and Savior, and armed with weapons meant to convert the faithless. This incredible cathartic feeling washed over me as I completed the last character. I had made something, and I knew it represented a part of my soul. So the idea of flying to London, England, to meet the guys who made this game, to show them my art, suddenly became terrifying. I was immediately brought back to that time in school when I felt this need to be validated as an artist. I thought, what if they don't like my drawings? Or worse, what if they don't say anything rude, but are just polite? For context, I didn't go in as a complete newcomer. I had already spent a decent amount of time diving into the lore and admiring the miniatures. But that can of bear meat? Apparently it's common in Finland. Surprisingly, my family really enjoyed it. But after we played a demo game and enjoyed a good conversation about morality and war, I finally had a chance to sit down with James Sherriff, the man who promoted this thing to begin with. Turns out James first reached out to Mike about doing an interview. And 28 Meg Volume 4 was the first time the world saw Trench Crusade. Not only was James responsible for this, he's their lead sculptor. If anyone could appreciate what it means to be creative, it was him. And that's why it became so much more intimidating to show him. But to my utter astonishment, His openness and willingness to receive my gesture of gratitude was well received. Sometimes it takes a simple gesture.
Those are the Trench Missionaries.
Oh, mate, well done. They're nice. They're nice. I'm just really happy to hear that you're back into drawing and clearly loving it.
Thank you.
That's all good. Keep it up.
An act of encouragement for us to feel seen, for us to accept ourselves for who we are and what we've become. I didn't have any expectations for what would become of my artwork, but sometimes fate has a different plan for us. I never thought I'd be a faithful missionary who'd become the chaos-worshipping heretic who'd later create Trench Missionaries who'd battle the Heretic Legion. And to my massive surprise, they were on board with a community license, which in simple terms means I can publicly say Trench Missionaries are compatible to play in games of Trench Crusade. They use the same rules as the new Antioch faction. There's a proxy for each unit type, and they're available for pre-order from Wargames Atlantic. They're hard plastic, multi-part kits, just like the classic Chaos Space Marines of old. The very first miniatures I discovered in Warhammer 40k that made me love Warhammer to begin with. I'm MiniWarGamer Dave, and these are the Trench Missionaries.